This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV.com. And as my special guest today, I have one of the good people in professional wrestling. He was known as Zip. He was known as the Doctor of Desire. Tom Prichard, former WWE Tag Team Champion, former WWE head trainer, trained some of the all-time greats. How are you doing today, Dr. Tom?
Devin, I'm doing great. Like I said, it's raining a little bit here, but doing great. Glad to be with you.
And, I did attend one of your training camps, so I could technically say that you also trained me in some ways, even though that was just for a couple of days.
But you see, you can actually say that. You can go ahead and do that, and then after I've seen some of the stuff you've done through the years, I would be kind of like Bob Zamuda, proud. You'd be the Andy Kaufman of the whole deal, and because you and Lanny Poffo, you and Terry Funk, you and I think even Billy Jack Haynes. And I got to tell you, no, I got to tell you before you even start, I saw Billy Jack in Philadelphia. I guess it was last year, and I hadn't seen Billy in so long, and he had the wig, and he didn't recognize me, but I sure as hell knew him. And I could see it when I talked to him. I could see how you guys did that, and I thought that's what's missing is the edginess and stuff like that, where people go, "What just happened?" You know what I mean? So yeah, I kind of admired that through the years seeing that because not too many people can do it, and not a whole lot of people can pull that kind of stuff off.
Well, judging by what you just said, maybe you should have your brother's job right now as head writer of SmackDown, because I think that is what's missing in wrestling.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's a lot missing right now in wrestling. I really do, but I don't know if we have all night or not. So
Now, you operate a wrestling school right now with Kane. Before we get into any of this, you want to fill in the fans that might not sit through this whole interview a little bit about your wrestling school and the podcast?
yeah, actually, we are reopening now June 1st, 2020, after being dark for the last 2 months due to all this pandemic stuff. But we're going to open up June 1st, which is a Monday, and we're going to make sure everything's sterilized, sanitized. I'm going to take everyone's temperature before you come in. I'm going to steam clean that, make sure everything is safe and sound for everybody to come in. It's in Knoxville, Tennessee. Just went down early this morning, got back this afternoon. Um, cleaning it up, making sure that whoever comes in, we've had a lot of people want to come to this class, and a lot of people want to come to one before we had to close down. But we'll see how many people show up. It's wrestling school. So a lot of people say they're going to be there, but once they think about it and the rubber hits the road, it not always what they really think they want to do. But yeah, we've been doing this in January. We would have started our second year, and right at that 11-week mark is when everything went to hell and we had to shut down. So that's what we got going on. The website is jpwrestlingacademy.com. We're on Facebook and Twitter too, but just type in jpwrestlingacademy.com and it'll have all the information on the website.
And one of the big problems with wrestling school is sometimes you have trainers that aren't qualified. You were a former WWE trainer. Then the other issue is, do they have connections to help you out once you get trained? And I don't think you could find a guy with better connections than Kane, who's so well respected in the business.
By all means, that's a huge part of this thing, man. It's like if you're going to wrestling school, you're going because you obviously want to get booked. So anyone who takes the time and trains for hours, we train actually at JPWA Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We take Wednesday off, Saturday off. Sundays we do promos from 12 to 2 in the afternoon, but we usually go from the beginners on Mondays, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 6 to 10 p.m. So that's 4 hours of training a night. And prior to that, I have an advanced class from 3 to 5:45. So If you're going to put that much time in, the beginner's class is a 12-week session, 5 days a week, and we try. We don't want to. I really don't want to run shows around Tennessee because they have enough running that we have a good guy, Burt Prentice, who runs USA Championship Wrestling out of Jackson, Tennessee. He's been very good in helping book some of our guys and give them experience, and that's really what you need. It's like being a stand-up comic. You can practice all day long in an empty room on your routine, but you really don't know if it's going to work or not until you go out in front of a crowd. So we've been very fortunate to have that opportunity. Some of our guys got to work Raw and SmackDown 4 weeks in a row, and also Emily Anzulis, who was one of the first winners on the Rock's Titan Games. She got signed. She came and trained with us. She also got signed with WWE. We just had a girl who came to us at. She started wrestling at 14 years old for her dad's promotion in Sevierville, but she just got a shot on AEW last week, and so they're getting opportunities, and we've been fortunate enough. You're right. What a better guy to have uh, than Glenn Jacobs to have an opportunity, say to help get someone's foot in the door. And of course, you have to work for it, and you have to be someone we have confidence in. And so far, we've had some pretty good guys come along, some pretty good guys and ladies come along, actually.
Now, is he hands-on at all with the school, or does he leave it pretty much up to you?
The majority of training's up to me because right now he has his hands full as the Knox County mayor, and he does stop by on occasion, and he has offered advice, and he has actually shown the guys some stuff because it does say Jacobs Prichard Wrestling Academy. It's not uh, just one guy, but he does have his hands full with the county. But yes, he does stop by. He still loves the business. Still loves to help out.
What's your history with Glenn? I'm sure you probably knew him from the Memphis days.
No, actually, he came in for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I got to know him a little bit then, and then he wasn't in Smoky Mountain very long before he actually moved to WWE, and that's where I got to know a little bit more about him. And uh, then when we moved back to Knoxville in 2012, of course, he had been here, and we got together on occasion, and it, the rest was he had an insurance company. My wife worked there for a little bit, and also we get together on occasion and just talk. And he thought Knoxville, Tennessee. He lives there. I live there. Why not? Let's see what could happen if we opened a school. I'd done it before, and uh, with mixed results because again, it's wrestling school. You got so many guys out there that can open up a school and promise you the moon and give you the stars. But we wanted to do it in a different way and just say, look, we're going to give everybody an opportunity. And some guys train 2 nights a week. Some guys train 3. We were going to train 5 and make it a point to have. Certainly, I was going to be there at every class, and Glenn would show up when he can, and make sure we didn't have the assistant instructor, you know what I mean, come in and on all that stuff. So that was what we did, and it takes a while to obviously build up, and I'm all in for it. It's been cool so far.
So, what do you? What's the difference between your training and like a guy like Bill DeMott? What would you? How would you explain the difference?
I think it's all in a different style. Everybody has their way. You got your way, but the right way and the only way does not exist. I think Bill is the
Oh, don't tell me it's
hard nosed
freezing. It's freezing again.
reason. Can you hear me?
Now
Yeah,
it's come
back.
back.
Okay, so where do we stop?
I
Sorry.
heard Bill is the hard nosed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Everybody has their way of coaching, but when you're coaching, you have to figure out. who to pat, who to kick in the ass and who to pat on the back, and there's not a whole lot of distance between that. So uh, my style is my style, and Bill's style is his style. I think there's people who liked his style, there's people who flourished under him, and people who enjoyed it. I just think we had a different way of doing it, but I always got along with Bill. I enjoyed Bill. I think I got Bill because he could be a pretty entertaining guy. He could be a pretty funny guy, and he's a good coach. He does. He's just that style of coach. He's an aggressive guy, and some people are aggressive, and I'm more. I'm going to give you enough rope, and I'm going to try and pull you back. But I think Bill's going to give you just enough, and then he's going to jerk the floor out from under you and let you struggle there for a little bit. So I mean, I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but he has his way. I have my way, but the right way and the only way does not exist. It's just whatever you. We're all looking for results, and whatever works best for you is what you got to use. I think.
I know you were brought in to replace him in Deep South Wrestling for a while there. Did you ever hear about that infamous Jelly Donut story where he had the guy naked in the ring?
Sure. Well, yeah, yeah. It was out there, and I when it came up, um, I I don't know that in this day and age, and knowing WWE the way I did, uh, I don't know if that was the wisest thing to do because everybody had a camera. And look, I wasn't the most popular guy with everybody either, but I just don't think I would have given anybody any ammunition like that because obviously it came back to haunt him. Uh, but once again, he has his way, I have my way, and whichever way works. And they obviously didn't have a problem with it at the time, and then I guess when it came out, they did. But uh, yeah, Bill, we all. I don't think you can find anybody who's going to get a perfect scorecard from 100% of the people. You're always going to have the ones who don't like this, and you want the ones who don't like that, and you're going to find that anywhere. I found that in my coaching. And some of the stuff I heard, I went, are you kidding me? You're really mad or you're really upset because we made you do this drill. It happens. It's the nature of the beast. It's the position you're in. You're not going to win. Uh, you may win a few, and that's all you can really hope for because you ain't going to please everybody.
I actually seem to recall, you probably don't even remember this because you've done so many tryouts. I think you were coaching when I had my FCW tryout that I was signed for, but the contract fell through. But between, you might remember the temper tantrum I threw when some idiot punched me in the ear. But between Deep South Wrestling, FCW, and NXT, where did you prefer coaching?
Um, I think FCW would have to bring it up. I never got to NXT. They canned before that happened. But
Oh, I didn't realize that.
no, I've never stepped foot in the performance center. But that's that. I mean, that's okay. That's what I'm saying. Not everybody liked my style, so they said, "Nah, you're on the last train out." Uh, but FCW was good for many reasons for me. Uh, the American Dream. You saw it. I remember the tryout. I remember the whole deal, man, because you were this psycho that stood out, and you can tell because you got those eyes, and you just look at you, and it's that time bomb, and that's the danger, and that's the part that if you can harness that energy and focus it where it needs to go, well, that's talent. And so we knew there was this tilting uh axis, or you were on needle there, and we could see it, but that's part of the explosiveness. So uh, I enjoyed having that part of FCW where we could all discuss things like that, and we could all make points about talent and say things that we liked, and it wouldn't be held against us, and it would be, I thought, pretty well discussed and debated and made decisions with. And I enjoyed that process, and doing it with Dusty Rhodes, especially at that time, was pretty cool, even at that point in my career, because I don't know that uh, the generation that was coming up in FCW at the time, or some of the guys that could come for a tryout, weren't really aware of what magnitude of star Dusty Rhodes really was, and even continued to be at that time, and didn't. That was the magic there, that a lot of people weren't aware of what they had in their midst. But when Dream did his promo class and he would talk to the kids, and this is where I got a lot of my stuff. Listening to him talk and listening to him coach and knowing how to get into your psyche and get into what he needed from you. You didn't handle everybody the same, and it goes back again to different coaching styles. But you knew how to handle it, and it was just, Dream was magic like that. So I loved FCW for that especially, being able to experience that, because that was once in a lifetime.
Obviously, some wrestlers you train, like the Kurt Angles, you knew they were going to be stars. Is there any guys that you trained in developmental that you really didn't think were going to go anywhere, but they surprised you?
Um, I don't know if there was that one guy or girl. Well, maybe, come to think of it, the Bellas really did surprise us, because when they came to us, they really knew nothing, and they were just these two pretty girls that came in, and we looked at each other going, "What are we supposed to do with these guys?" But they weren't the first like that. They weren't the first who were clueless. It's just that I'm surprised, but also proud and happy that they stepped up to the occasion and made the most of what they came with, because they actually learned, and a majority of that, the credit has to go to Natty Neidhart, because she really did take them under her wing. And I remember putting her, having them in matches together, and telling them that Natty was going to be the captain and the general, and she really helped those. She helped a lot of the divas out back at that time too. But I would say the Bellas probably, yeah, really surprised us. Everybody else, uh, I don't know, not so much.
Did you
Pretty
have
much,
much of a hand in Roman Reigns' training? Because I think he was from FCW.
he was. Yeah, I want to say I had a big hand in Roman's training, but he was one of those guys, one of those athletes that you just looked at and you knew. I mean, he came from the family. But he had a great work ethic. You could tell by the way he showed up at practice. You could tell by the way he practiced. You could tell by the way he took it seriously. And um, that was the great thing about that. You had some of those guys there who understood this was an opportunity for them to shine. And Roman Reigns was one of those guys that didn't belong anywhere but the main event. And you knew it. Sheamus was another one who didn't belong anywhere but the main event. He was he looked like a star. They look like action figures come to life, and that was the good part about it.
Why do you think they've never removed the initial outfit of Roman Reigns? I think he's the only one of the three that kept the original like bulletproof vest or whatever you want to call it that he wears.
Well, I obviously don't know, but if you're asking me why, it might be Roman's decision. He might like it. He might think it's cool. He might have some issues with it. I mean, it's a better way to. Well, what better way to not have to worry about training abs or anything? Just wear your damn vest every night in the ring. Hell, that's not a bad gig. But no, I honest to goodness, I can only imagine that it would probably be because of him. Because if he wanted to change it, I'm sure they'd be on board.
Now, there's a lot of fan questions, huge response to me interviewing you. I noticed you still have short hair. You were always known for your long hair. I know they made you shave it off when you became Zip. Did you just always keep it shorter after? Is there any reason why you're short hair now?
No, this is actually my Corona haircut because I went like 3 months and I was already needing a haircut at that time. No, I've always been that long haired guy, but then I'll go and I'll get it cut short and let it go for a few months and let it get shaggy and just out of control again. But this is I just got this last what's today? God, today's Monday, so I got this last Wednesday, I guess. No, there's no reason for it. I just, I I wasn't wanting to go get a haircut in a while, so cut it short, man. That's the way I said.
Now, did you have any experience with the infamous groupies in the Memphis territory during your time in that territory?
Wait a minute. Did I have anything to do with the groupies in Memphis?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
this
because you had that long hair. I'm
oh,
sure.
oh, 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 I don't know if it had anything to do with the hair, but yeah, I think we all had something to do with it back then. That was, you know, what a lot of people, when we talk about the '80s so fondly, it's not always because there were great matches, and even I don't mean to go off on the side road here, but I'll answer that question. But back in the '60s and '70s, not all of them were great matches. When I'm talking about that, I'm talking about learning the basics and fundamentals and just get this element out of the match. If you're going to watch it for excitement, not all of them were exciting. Some of them were stinkers, man. Some of them just sucked. But the '80s were a fond memory for a lot of reasons because it was a fun time to be in the business, and that was what the business was. I mean, have you ever heard the story about Bill Watts coming to Memphis, and then Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler going to Louisiana looking, and Jarrett and Lawler asking where your blowjobs? I mean, that's what it was back then, where you had young guys. Devon Eriks were coming up. You had Ricky Morton. You had Eddie Gilbert. All the guys in the early 20s, and girls were coming to the shows, and it was a pretty cool time. It was it was a magical time in the kingdom, long, long, far away. But it really was, man. And Memphis was part of that. Memphis had some crazy stuff going on, but every territory was like that back then. It really was.
I recently heard that in '89 there was some contract talks for you to go to NWA/WCW, but I guess it never worked out. According to the Wrestling Observer, apparently they wrote it was because the money wasn't right for you or something, which sounds a little strange for you to
Yeah.
turn down. Could you shed any light on that?
I don't know if there was a contract thing going on in '89. There was I think that's when Dennis left the Midnight Express, and for a weekend, that was before cell phones too. And for a weekend, Adrian Street told me we were on a 3 day run or 4, whatever it was, and he says, "Hey, Jim Cornette is trying to get a hold of you, or was trying to get a hold of you." And in later years, yeah, Jimmy told me the story. Is like Dennis had left for a night, and Crockett had just bought uh, the Florida territory, Tampa, and they had some guys they pretty much inherited. So within a span of 2 days, they needed a partner for Bobby, and in 2 days, Stan was sitting in Dusty's office, and he said, "Here's your partner," which is great for Jim because Stan and Bobby were great friends. Jim had always wanted to manage them, and it was good. But Jimmy had told me he actually put my name in, and and I told Dream about that story later, and he signed his book to me and said, "I wish you would have come in. I'm so sorry you didn't want to come work with me that day," and all this stuff. So, but no, I don't believe it had anything to do with money, man. I was in Alabama. Look,
Yeah.
and yeah, I was having a good time. But if I would have got a contract, I think I would have taken it. Because I'm sure what they offered or would have offered would have been considerably a lot more. But no, that wasn't. I think that was the story. Jimmy was looking to have me come in, and Dream had already hired Stan.
They recently discussed it on Jim Ross's podcast, and they didn't think it made sense either that you would have turned down a shot of a potential push on
Yeah.
national TV. And it's really too bad that didn't work out because that would have been great timing for you.
Well, it would have been, but here's the deal on that too. Looking back, I don't know that I would have been ready for it. I don't know that uh, I was and the only way you get seasoned, the only way you get it uh, is just get in the oven and go. I mean, turn the heat up and go. But Stan had already had a great run in Memphis, and he and Bobby had chemistry, and he had a great look. He was tall and a lot taller. He was taller than I was, and he had a great presence about him. He brought a great quality and another element to the Midnight Express. I would have. I'm know I would have enjoyed the role, but I just don't know that it would have been. It certainly wouldn't have been the same as Stan and Bobby, and I don't think it would have gone the same way.
When you were working in Houston, either as a kid working in the office for Paul or as a wrestler later on, did you have any contact with Gino Hernandez?
Oh, of course, yeah. Gino was a couple years ahead of me, and Gino did the same thing. We used to go to the matches every Friday night, and Gino uh, was one of the kids. I say kid. He was 2 years older than me, 3 years older than me, I think, and he was hanging around. He was El Medico's stepson, Luis Hernandez, and his wife would come. Luis died in Japan of a heart attack, and Gino was a young kid, and we were young kids, Bruce and I, and Gino would talk to Paul, and then Gino eventually became a second, take the jackets back, and then he would sit next to Paul as Paul's assistant, and then eventually he started wrestling, and as soon as Gino started wrestling, I actually called Paul one day uh, during lunch at school, and I said, Mr. Bosch, if there ever comes an opportunity, I'd love to be a second, just like Gino. and and lo and behold, it was about a month later when Tommy Fouché was going on vacation, and Paul came up to me and says, "Would you like to be a second next week?" And I said, "My God, does the Pope shit in the woods? Is the Bear Catholic?" So um, that's how that happened. But Gino had already progressed, and Gino was one of those guys that uh, had it. He had it. No matter what you could say, he was. A lot of people said he was above average worker, but I think he was more than that. I think he just had this quality about him. He was not a baby face. He was a natural asshole. He was a natural heel, and that takes talent too. There's some people who are just playing a bad guy. Gino was the role. Gino was the $1 million man. Gino wore the suit. Gino had everything, the Armani and the shoes and the tie. He looked the part from day. Well, he kind of fell into it, but even from day one, he looked like he was special. So, yeah, I knew Gino. I worked with Gino a few times. But I think Gino had a chip on his shoulder with everybody. He just was like that with everybody, and I think it was later on when he probably relaxed a little bit and eased off because that happens as you get older. But I also think he saw the business for what it was, and he knew he was taken care of in Dallas. He loved the Von Erichs. The Von Erichs loved him. Gary loved him, and I think once he fell into that, once he got comfortable, he didn't have to be so much of an asshole. But I really didn't see him much before he passed away.
Jake told me in my interview with Jake that he'd heard that Gino had some involvement with the gay community. Did you ever hear anything that he may have been bisexual?
Yeah, yeah, that was always a rumor. I mean, he had a best friend who owned a club in Houston. His name was Walter. But yeah, there were always rumors. whisperings, if you will, but it was also whisperings that he was Paul's illegitimate son, and that I don't believe was the case either. But who knows? And even I think even back then nobody really cared. I mean, there
No,
might have been, you know what I mean? There might have been a few people who did, but it was just more or less like this guy would come with him, Walter, and Walter might have looked a little odd or a little different, and that might have been. I'm sure that's where the rumors came from. But Gino had his share of women too, and he had his share of really, really nice looking ladies, and so uh, whatever, whatever. I mean, yeah, there was always whispers.
I think Jake just brought it up to illustrate the point that he had some secret lives in various different aspects.
Oh, Gino had a lot of secrets. I don't doubt that because I knew a couple secrets that I'll keep secret, but Gino had secrets, and once again, I think that time period lended itself to guys having either odd habits or odd secrets, and they shared them with very, very, very few people. And uh, it was a quirky time. It was a wild time. You would have been right in the Killer Carl Cox division in the '80s. You would have been that guy because uh, there was a danger in the air. It was like Brody. When Brody came in, he was a calm before the storm, but you knew you didn't want to go in and dance in the water and rile up the waves, because if you did, then it wasn't going to stop until he wanted to stop. But but there was that element of danger. There was that element of, I'm not sure this guy's really all there or not, and that's what you wanted. You wanted the doubt. You wanted that mystery. You wanted that not everybody knows everything about you. And Gino was that guy because there were years he would just work one night a week, Houston, Texas, in the main event. And he would dress to the nines, and they would draw money. And this was when Paul Bosch, you can make a $5,000 payoff. Let me repeat that. You could make a $5,000 payoff in Houston, Texas, or usually it was $2,000 or 25, whatever the average main eventer was. Gino was in that slot, and he drew, and he, he didn't have to work anywhere else, and there was a time when that's all he did. And of course he got involved with a lot of the things that everybody got involved with back then, and some people knew when to take the foot off the gas and others didn't. So that was just that time. And I don't want to romanticize it, but I do say I will have to say it was certainly, oh shit, it's a different business all the time, but it was certainly a lot more um, fun to me. It really was.
Yeah, now it's more let's go back to the hotel and pop in a video game.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot healthier and it's a lot more.
Yeah,
It's a lot safer, and that's good in a way. But uh, I don't know that everybody's looking for um, an umbrella in the rain, if you will. I mean, some people don't mind going out and daring lightning to strike them. I mean, right, wrong, or indifferent. That was the kind of people that this business drew, and that's kind of what drew me into it, was those kind of uh, the gypsies, the vagabonds, the guys that would go from town to town, and pirates, and and they didn't care if they were real pirates or not. They were in their mind, and they were in their actions, and they were in these uh, elements of whatever they were put in at the time. If they were the good guy or the villain, they took all these great elements and all these character traits they might have had in themselves, or they learned from somebody else, or they happened to see on a movie screen, and they embellished it and they became it, and they just went out and they were it for the night, for the week, for however long they wanted to be. Terry Funk was a cowboy from the time he could put on his chaps until the time he took them off, man. That when you guys do angles like that, there's no other way he knows how to do it except the real way, the way you feel it. And you can't say, hey, when I hit you with this glass, the glass is going to go over here and we're going to go over there. You don't know where it's going to land. And it's the same way with your actions. You don't know how it's going to land, where it's going to land. You do it as safely as you can, but you have to feel it and you've got to react naturally. And that was the great thing about the business back then, because the boys were on pretty much all the time. And it eventually got to where I guess we set a fire, and the fire got a little too close. And when you're trying to put it out, you find that you need more than one hose. And unfortunately, um, not too many people made it out. But but it's safer now, and it shows. And I don't know
Yeah.
that wrestling or professional wrestling was ever meant to be safe. It was meant to have a little edge to it. It was meant to have some dirt in it and some grime and a little salt. And it's supposed to rub you that way. That's the way I felt it, and that's the way I saw it. I understand why it is the way it is today, because of video games, because of entertainment factors and things people see. But man, it was just so much more authentic when I used to watch it with guys who like Brody became Brody and became authentic and became that guy for the extended period of his Japanese tour. And then when he got back to San Antonio, he could become Frank again with his son and his wife. And same thing with Mark Lewin. I trained with Mark Lewin in the gym as a kid, man, and I was amazed because I was wanting to talk to Mark, and I was wanting to be this. We bonded, yes, because he was taking me to the gym. I'm 17 years old. I'm working out with the maniac Mark Lewin, but I was in awe because he was so. Um, have you ever met Mark?
No,
Oh God, man! Oh my God!
heard a lot about him. Kevin Sullivan, though.
Yes. Yes. And I got to live it. And I got to live it. But I'm just so, and I want to keep living it. So I don't want to say the wrong thing. And I'm being so confined, but I'm taking it all in. And those are the lessons that aren't out there today. Those are the aspects you don't get to let absorb. Just like being with Dusty Rhodes, I absorbed the dream stories. I absorbed everything he said because this is the American dream. This is and for those who don't understand it, who've never seen him or felt his power, there's no other way to get it. I can't explain it enough. But uh, anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but the '80s were
Yes.
yeah, the '80s were a great time for authentic characters who weren't playing a part. King Curtis was that lunatic. Mark Lewin was that lunatic. The Sheik, the original Sheik, Ed Farhat, was that lunatic. Even though you knew he was from Detroit, even though you knew he could speak English, you really didn't know unless you heard it for yourself. And he guarded that. He guarded his persona, he guarded his character, he guarded who he was, and never let anybody in on the secret, never let anybody in on the con, never let anybody in who didn't need to be in. And times change, the business changed. That's cool, but we can't go back, and we can't put the toothpaste back in the bottle or in the tube. I know.
Yeah, I think back in those days, one of the reasons why it was so entertaining was those characters were like real life characters like that. But yeah.
Well, they got lost in it, and they were traveling by car or some by plane, but they got lost in it. And why not? What a better place to get lost in being the Sheik? What a
Yeah.
better place to get lost in being the Maniac, Mark Lewin, or Bruiser Brody, or Gino Hernandez, the handsome half breed. You could get lost in it, and people did recognize you back then, and that was another part of it. You never let your guard down. You never came out of character, right, wrong, again, or indifferent, or people kind of gravitated towards it, I guess.
Did Mark ever tell you about that competition he had with Piper one night on who could do the most drugs and drink the most?
No, I was in the business by then. I had read that in Gary's book. It doesn't surprise me. Uh, I've I've read scripture with both Piper and Mark. Where we open up the book and we read John 14, 16, 9, whatever. And there's no doubt in my mind. I would venture to say that it was probably a draw. And I would venture to say it was somebody from the outside who said, "Guys, you got to go home. We've been here for 3 weeks. We call it a draw." I could see something like that happen, but no, he never told me about it. But I certainly could only imagine.
I guess Mark is now married into royalty over in Singapore, according to Sullivan, so he's doing pretty well for himself these days.
Well, he was married to a Japanese lady who was connected to someone when he was in Houston in the 70s. He was married to Taruko, I think, and she was somehow related or connected to. But Mark has always been that guy who has these exotic um, herbs to try, or this exotic oil to try, or this exotic technique. uh you know uh, he's always been that guy. So again, living the gimmick, Maniac Mark Lewin, the third eye, and and the beetle nut. I thought the beetle nut was made up until, no, there's an actual beetle nut. And Lewin, yeah, Lewin and King Curtis, during their time in the business, were known as madmen. And I admired that. I really did, man. I wanted to get as close to that as I could, because those are the kind of guys that I want to know. I want to know what they had for breakfast. I want to know what made them tick, because they were the ones more interesting to me.
For the Von Erichs, I know you were around them quite a bit over the years. Did you ever witness anything funny from them? I've heard a lot of outlandish stories.
Well, no, I honest to goodness, I was only around them a little bit. Kevin, just in the recent years, we messaged back and forth on DM'd on Twitter. But when I was starting out, they were starting out. They started out, I think, a year or two before me as well. And I did some shots in Dallas before I got shipped out, and then came back and I saw Kerry. He did some shots in Alabama, but I was never really around the boys that much. Um, they pretty much stayed in Dallas and worked St. Louis and worked some other shots, Tampa and stuff. But I was never, the only time I crossed paths with Kerry for any length of time was Alabama. And I don't recall why he was coming in for those shots. It might have been just favors for Robert and Ron, obviously, but nothing that I could, nothing that I actually witnessed. I've heard a lot of stories, but nothing that I've personally seen.
Have you worked with the Suns at all in MLW, I believe? I don't know if you're still a producer there, but you were doing that.
I did for a little bit, not right now though. But yeah, the kids are great. The kids, um, they are just like Dave and Kevin in the wildness and the attack mode they have when they go to the ring. And that's one thing that made the Von Erich stand out. They weren't like everybody else. And I'm sure they were stiff as hell. I never had the opportunity to work with any of them, but I would see Kevin just jump on somebody. I see Kerry throw those punches. That's, David seemed to be the best worker of them all, but worker, I guess, technical. But they all were great workers, and a worker just is somebody who can go out and command attention or have that uh, that persona, the aura is what I'm looking for. Uh, so they the kids were just like David and Kevin. They reminded me a lot of them, man, with just that wild, crazy style, and it was so unorthodox that it made them stand out. It made Kevin and David stand out. Certainly made Kevin stand out, and I don't think again that was lightning in a bottle with the Freebirds and Von Erichs during that era because they were made for each other. They worked great with each other.
When you were in Houston as a youngster, did you ever have any contact with superstar Billy Graham when he would come in there?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he brought Steve Strong in. I was taking pictures at ringside for a magazine at that time, and I might have been 13. I started taking pictures when I was 12 for Gong magazine and Wrestling News, just trying to get my way in there. And Superstar would pose. I was allowed to get in the ring. I gave him and Steve Strong, I was one of his proteges back then, some pictures, and they always asked for pictures. And I got to meet deal with Superstar before he went in the Hall of Fame. Also, so yeah, I had some dealings with him as a kid. I don't really think he recalled that. I told him about that, but then we had some communication during the Hall of Fame, and he was having some issues. I got him to the hospital, but superstar. He's another one. He's another one of those guys that I you just have to ask yourself what makes you tick. And a story Dream told me one time. He said he just picked up Superstar's bag. They were waiting at the Ramada, getting ready to go to the garden, and Dream just took his bag and slung it into traffic for no reason, just as a rib, stuff like that. So those guys did crazy shit like that, and they had a good time. But Superstar was certainly he was ahead of his time, and he was the guy that Hogan and Ventura and everybody wanted to copy. So he grabbed their attention. That's something.
At one point in time, you weren't working as a trainer. WWE, I think, had you as head of their developmental, working in the office. That seems like that would be not the most fun job in the world. How did you like doing that?
Well, I was still training people. I was over the talent development part, but JR was head of talent relations. No, I enjoyed that part. It was on the fourth floor in talent relations, and I was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, and it's the executive floor, and I thought I could get away with it. My justification was I'm a coach, but I'm on the executive floor, and finally someone had to tell me I need you to dress more professionally, which I went, oh man. But no, it was fun. You had good people in the office, Ann Russo, Nicole Durazio, and we got along great. It was at WWE, and it was my dream job. I was still training people. I got to go to OVW and HWA for the week and split my days up and scout the talent in Louisville and go to Cincinnati and hang out with Les. And so it really wasn't that bad of a gig. I was going to TVs as well. And so I was busy and I was involved, and uh, it was really good. I mean, it wasn't that bad, honestly.
Is there anyone you recruited or helped recruit during that time that you're particularly proud of?
I think I rem- I remember when Bobby Roode had a tryout, and this happened more than once, and it came down between Bobby and another guy, and I'm not going to mention this guy's name because he was only there for a month. And I'm glad Bobby got more seasoning anyway. It was just it worked out in the end better for him. But at that time, it came down to Bobby and one other guy, and I pushed for Bobby, and this other guy got the nod, which okay. But when he got canned a month later, it was pretty much vindication because I had the idea that this guy didn't have the attitude. Let me say that. He didn't have the attitude that he needed to have to survive. And especially at that time, when you came in, you had to warm up, to the locker room, and they had to warm up to you too. And it's not like you don't just come in gangbusters and here I am, I'm a star, I'm a star, because somebody's going to show you that you're not. And that's pretty much what happened, I think. Um, but everybody that got an opportunity, I'm proud of, because uh, especially when they came in and we get the reports from Louisville, we get the reports from Cincinnati, they were what we expected, because once you get signed, or back then, once we signed somebody, they got acclimated pretty much to Louisville's way, and then Les Thatcher had his way in Cincinnati. But they would do TV in Louisville, both groups, and they would learn how to get along with Cornette, learn Danny's way, and learn Les's way. And uh, again, there's your way, there's my way, but there's not just one right way. So everybody has their way of coaching, everybody has a way of encouragement, or everybody has a way of firing somebody up. So I thought there were three great people to learn from, Jim Cornette, Danny Davis, and Les Thatcher. They all had different, distinct personalities. And anybody we had at that time, and especially, my God, there was Lesnar and Shelton and Cena and Batista, some pretty good guys at JR. And I'm sure Bruce had a hand in it too. Scouted these guys from Bassman in California, and there was a lot of guys coming in there that were looked the part, had the attitude, and had that presence that you wanted for WWE at that time. So I can't pick one particular guy and say this is it, but I would like to see Bobby Roode get signed a lot earlier than he did, but I'm glad he didn't, because he got seasoned even better. So when he came this time, he was ready, more ready than ever, and I think he did okay.
And I remember in those days too, it wasn't like it is today where they put a greater effort at looking at the extras when you send like an extra back there. Because I remember like you sent me back once during the time Bobby Roode was also working. Les Thornton called for me. But they wouldn't even look at you some days. Like I remember like you're just back there doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, there again, you got to remember, it's all a game. And I tell guys this all the time. The work is backstage. And there was a fella, again, I won't name names because I don't want to hear it. But there was a fella that they made get dressed. And this is when they did TV 3 days in a row. They made him get dressed, and he wore face paint. And made him paint his face for 3 days in a row. And waited until the last match was going to go on. This one, it was marathon TV back then, like 4 hours a night. Even the people were going, "Oh, let's get done with this." And 4 hours, the guy's sitting there dressed and ready to go and pumped up and everything else. And they come back and say, "Oh, scratch your match." And they did this, I think, three times in a row. So there's 6, 9 times. Whoa. But they wanted to see how he reacted, and they want to see what he did. And that's a game. It's a game. And you say, "Oh, they don't do that." Well, okay. They do that. Or they did that.
Who is they? Who is they, for example?
Okay.
Could you even say it? Like,
well, let's see. If you have some producers hanging around, they're talking, and somebody comes and says, "So how's the new guy doing?" I don't know. You want to see him work? Yeah, let me see him work. Okay. So we're going to go tell you, hey, you got a match. You need to get all your face paint. You need to get ready. Okay. How's he doing? What'd he say? Nothing. He's getting ready to work. Okay, cool. Let's see what he does. Um, there were people, I think. I'm not I'm not going to name any names. There were people, I think, who enjoyed watching the performance, the attitude, the vibe, the electricity. When you're sitting there waiting for something, they want to see, is he going to get mad? Is he going to get hot? Is he going to punch the wall? Because one guy, it's another fellow who they had get dressed and told him no, you're not going to work tonight. He got pissed off and let it know he was pissed off. And a producer pulled him aside and said, "Listen, you dumbass, this is what you don't do. Control yourself. You play the situation." And that's part of the learning process. As petty and as minute as that sounds, that's the game. It really is part of the process. And uh, I'm sure it goes on today. It's wrestling, and I tell people this the whole time. The work is backstage. What we do in the ring is really that much, but it's how you conduct yourself. It's it's that game that whoever likes to play, and I don't know if it still goes on today. Sure, I don't.
Well, that's another thing why it's valuable to go to a wrestling school like that. Because I remember where the Hearts, where I was trained, they never told us anything about backstage etiquette. And I remember Lance Storm gave me a warning once before a tryout: don't sit down in front of the TV monitor because you're going to get big heat for that. And like that was just a little thing that you never would think about otherwise.
Right, and I don't know if that was so much a deal. And there were little games, I guess, because there was still more old school attitude back then. I know for myself just that it was everybody was watching everything, and so it was about, do you fit in? Can you fit in? An analogy that comes to mind is when Dusty Rhodes was given the polka dots. Okay, well, right again, people want to think it's a rib. Only whoever gave him the polka dots knows if it's a rib or not. Or they knew Dusty Rhodes. My God, Dream had worked the Garden with Superstar. They had a 3 match program. Dream had been around forever, so now he's going to come in the company, and they're going to make him the common man, and he's going to wear polka dots. Okay, watch him get this over. Yeah, yeah, watch him get this over, and he did. So and they would do that with anybody. Just give you an opportunity, see what you do with it. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, is I guess the thinking. But to understand the mind games and the mind you have to come up with promos uh, to be the guy, to be the man, because it is a competition. The competition is backstage. It's not in the ring, but it is in the ring. If somebody's going to cut a promo, you better be able to come back with one. If you don't like what they write for you, come up with something better. And those guys were firing live rounds sometimes, and it just went back and forth. And I saw real quick. I saw a great video with Harley Race explaining, when Randy Orton and he did their angle in St. Louis, and Randy spit. And the guy asked him, said, "Did you know that was coming?" He says, "No, but you notice I ducked." He said, "There's some things that are going to happen out there that nobody can write or talk about or say is going to happen back here. We can't talk about it. It just has to happen out there, and it has to know on both ends this could happen. This is going to happen." And when Lesnar is firing live rounds, forearms on Randy Orton or whoever it may be, and split him open, I don't think Brock is that unprofessional. I think they're professional enough to go out there and say, "Listen, at the end when I hit these forearms, I'm going to throw the elbows. What happens, happens." And the guys would go in the ring understanding that. Years ago, you understood that. Years ago, guys would go hard ways for real. Sometimes that's an accident, but it's coming, and that's part of it. So, and that takes the mental part of this business. And I, uh, I only learned it by watching it and seeing it. I wish I would have absorbed it earlier. I knew it was happening, but I didn't have the wherewithal to put my mind to it. I didn't have that. I guess I wasn't that smart, obviously, but that's what it is, and that's a huge part of this business. And you're right. That's what we do tell people. I do tell people because I want you to be prepared. I don't want you to go and be an idiot. I don't want you to embarrass yourself. I don't want you to embarrass us. So, but that's been that way forever. It's the entertainment business. Hey man, you should get some stars. Put about 4 stars on your trunks. Yeah, that look great. Hey, and then wear a tutu and put some ballet shoes on too. That look great for your gimmick. Watch this. You know what I mean? I mean, there's little things guys are going to tell you that aren't exactly in your best interest, and you have to be
I
aware of it.
even had Carl Willett tell me a story. Like now he's had a decent run in Ring of Honor, but he got a tryout around 2008, and he had all that heat before, and he came back and he had his hair done up all fancy with a mohawk, and the first thing they told him was you need to shave it off.
Right, right. So I mean, it's never ending, but that's where your confidence comes in and your belief in yourself. And I think probably the smartest guy to figure that out is Jericho. Jericho's reinvented himself all these years, and he always knew who Jericho was. And it takes knowing that, having the confidence, and being able to sell yourself to the company, to the guy who's making the decisions.
Now I'll get some of the fan questions now. A fan named Kenny Morgan wanted to know what your payoffs were like in Alabama.
Okay. Well, sometimes we would get $40. Sometimes we would get 60. How about that? There was a rare occasion we would get over $100. No, we were making in Alabama during the time I was there, anywhere from 550, $600 a week, and it was a short territory. It wasn't a whole lot of driving, and it wasn't uh, expensive to live there either. And I think Alabama doesn't get a lot of play because it's kind of that hidden territory you would go to. You could lay on the beach until 3 o'clock, still go home, take a shower, and leave by 4. You'd be there in plenty of time. Many times I would ride with Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden and get there 5 minutes before bell time. Robert was the booker, and I'd be on first or second, but usually first, and put my boots on, go out there, do 15 minutes, and come back. But $500 to $600 was the norm there.
And I've interviewed both of the Fullers, and they seem like great guys. I don't know how they were to work for, but as people, they seem like friendly.
Dude, they were businessmen, but they were fun to work with. I think Ron and Robert both knew that the guys were having fun in the territory, and they knew how to keep the dressing room on a good vibe. And not everybody likes a good dressing room. Sometimes they like that competition and that strife, and that's good for some places. But in Alabama, it was everybody was kind of going up and down the highway and on Pensacola Beach. The heels had one side, baby faces had another, I guess, and because we never ran into each other on the beach. But yeah, no, they were great people to work for. Entertaining as hell.
And Phil wanted to know what your thoughts are on the current tag team wrestling scene, and if there's any tag teams that you like to watch yourself these days.
Yeah, I don't know if their name is still the Revival or FTR, whatever their name is, but those guys grew up in the Charlotte territory, and they know tag team wrestling. They enjoy tag team wrestling, and I really like watching them. I also like the Private Party at AEW. I saw some After Dark last week. They're 22 years old or early 20s, whatever it may be. And they did some exciting stuff. Now, if they can get someone to explain where to put that exciting stuff and how to use it, they're going to be okay. And I think they will be okay. It's kind of like another guy, Myron Reed, who was with MLW too, impressed me. He was in a unit, 3 guys, him and Jordan Oliver, I think, and Coco Brazil. You know who I'm talking about? Koto Brazil. Anyway,
Okay.
they had a 3-man unit, and they did some pretty cool stuff too. But yeah, I think the Revival and Private Party and whatever Myron and Oliver and Koto are.
And James wanted me to ask, first he wanted to say you're his favorite Prichard, and he also wanted to know your thoughts on Jim Cornette saying that Tim Horner tried to bleed Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
He tried to what?
Like bleed the company as far as Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I guess there was some heat between Cornette and Tim Horner.
Yeah. Well, I think you have two personalities that, Tim being from Morristown and Jim coming in, opening up a wrestling company in Tim's hometown. I think Tim might have had an idea that he was going to be, a star, and Jimmy had other ideas, I guess. I don't know a whole lot about the heat, quite honestly. When I was working Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I was happy with where I was at, and I didn't want any troubles. I think they said some things back and forth, and whatever it is, I'm at this stage of the game, I'm glad to step to the sidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ozzy Morrison wanted me to ask you if you had any interactions with Macho Man over the years.
Yeah, actually, I did. And the first time I met him was in St. Louis. I went for Larry Matuszek. I believe it was 1983, around there. And Randy had come in with the IWA World Championship, I think, the belt he had in Lexington. And uh, that's where I first met him. I was in a 6-man, myself, Chavo Guerrero, Tiger Conway Jr. against Buddy Landell, Savage, and Eddie Mansfield. So that was my first interaction. Then when I visited Bruce, I would go to Connecticut on occasion, and Randy and Bruce were pretty close, and went to dinner with them a couple of times. And Randy was always great to me, and seemed like a good guy.
Now, Eddie Mansfield, I've had my own interactions with, and he seems like a complete asshole. What was your interaction like?
Um, well, once again, Eddie was authentic. Eddie was one of those guys. He was an asshole, but he embraced it. I don't think he could have been a babyface if he tried, and that was my interaction with him. I got it. I'd met guys like him before, but there were guys like that, and I don't know about today, but there were guys like that who had that chip on their shoulder. And Eddie was talented. I'll give him that. I worked with him a couple times. He was talented. He could work in the ring, but it was that attitude, and he didn't care. So, yeah, that was Eddie.
And Sean Monahan wanted to know who your favorite opponent is.
Brett Armstrong. Brett Armstrong was one of the greatest. And no, but not a whole lot of people know about Brad. They know about Road Dogg, but uh, you could always tell. When Ric Flair would come to the territory, Ric Flair would come to Atlanta, or he'd come to Birmingham, and he'd want to work with Brad. He would specifically ask if he could have Brad on at least one or two of those dates that they had on the champion at that time. Ernie Ladd, 6'9", 7 foot tall, put Brad over for the North American Championship in Louisiana when it was a big man's territory. It was, and it just goes to show the respect and admiration that anybody Brad worked for, they took care of him. And Brad was one of the best in the ring, probably my greatest opponent ever.
Is it true that he had a WCW contract for about a year and they rarely use him.
Yeah, yeah. He had a contract with WCW. I think it was longer, might have been longer than a year, but he had hurt his knee, and they took care of him. Uh, Even after it was healing, I think he showed up, and they paid him, took care of him. But once again, you know, his dad, Bullet Bob, was working as an agent. Brad had been around Atlanta and from Atlanta, and everybody loved him. He was he was that guy backstage that if he could be like he was backstage in front of the camera, he was road dog but able to work with anybody. And Doggy Dog, Road Dog will tell you himself that he's an entertainer, and Brad was the best worker, with the exception of Bob. Obviously, Bob was in a category all by himself. Uh, but Brad was the best worker of the boys, and had the personality and just funny as hell. You always want to be in a dressing room with Brad because he was life.
Have you heard anything about Bob's health? Because I heard he had cancer or something, and he decided he doesn't want to do the treatments. That's the last I heard.
Yeah, I talked to him 2 weeks ago. Gosh, yeah, whatever whatever day we're at, 2 weeks ago, and he's in Florida, and uh, yeah, he doesn't want to take the treatment. He's 77 years old, and it's just why he told me he had a good life. Um, he's okay. He doesn't want to do it. He's okay. So
Especially in this lockdown situation, it's not the most fun life to be in these days.
no, it's really not.
Now, Nick Marugo wanted to know how it was working for the LaBelles in California and what Chavo Guerrero was like.
I got along with Chavo. Chavo in the early days. I When I went to California, the Chavo was the booker, and it was again 20 years old going to Los Angeles by myself, wrestling in the Olympic Auditorium. It was called the Madison Square Garden of the West Coast, so I'm expecting. Uh, I got exactly what I expected. I mean, my first night in, I met Dr. Jerry Graham sitting in the first dressing room, and oh man, he was drunk as hell, but a really cool guy. He invited me in. Tell me, well, what's your name, kid? Where you from? And, just said Houston, Texas. Worked for Paul Bosch, and he went on. He started with the stories. Um, Chavo Guerrero, uh, Mondo, Al Madrill, Victor Rivera, John Tolis, Pampero, Firpo, all those guys were there, and it was this classic wrestling building with these classic wrestling dressing rooms, and um, I'm learning the wrestling business, so it was kind of cool. Mike LaBelle was interesting. He was nice to me, and I always heard stories about him too. But he was nice to me. Gene was nice to me when he was there too, and it was for again 20 years old. Lived in Van Nuys. I lived in downtown Los Angeles for the first 2 months. And then if you've ever been to downtown Los Angeles, you know that's not where you want to live. I was at the Milner Hotel in Flower 9th and Flower 8th and Flower Street. I'll never forget it. And Chief Jules Strongbow and I, Frankie Hill, would walk downtown Los Angeles. We'd walk to the Olympic Auditorium when we didn't have a car. It was like, oh my God, man. But it was a cool in 1980. It was okay. Los Angeles was still Los Angeles, and Hollywood was still Hollywood. I would go there on my nights off sometimes, and the Grandma's Chinese Theater, or just go look and observe people. I mean that was kind of where I was at. The beaches were great. Um, so
Girls were pretty great, I imagine, too.
I'm telling you, that was the business. That was what the business was, and I embraced it. Yeah, sure did.
Now, how were the crowds in those days?
Horrible, Horrible. Yeah, they weren't doing very well. I was only supposed to be there for 3 weeks and then go to Oregon. But Chavo told me, no, you're going to stay here. And I thought he was going to call Don Owen and explain it to him. I thought that's how it worked. The booker was going to handle all that. Well, he didn't. I didn't know that. But the crowds were down. They would bring in Blue Demon sometimes. I don't think they ever brought in Santo, but they brought in Blue Demon Blue Demon, whatever. Um, and they would bring some other guys from Mexico that might draw a little bit, but at that time, LA was on its ass, and the only reason I would stay there was because I was having such a great time, and it was a good place to hang out.
I guess Piper was long gone by then.
Well, my first night in Fresno, I flew from Houston to Fresno, and that was when I first met Piper. He came in. It was at the Wilson Theater, and they had dressing rooms upstairs and kind of a maze. And I remember the door slamming downstairs, and I remember somebody yelling, "So where is that damn Bob?" Whatever his name was. And he stomps upstairs, and he's got his suit, not a suit, but a jacket on. And I'm sitting in a room as he comes upstairs, sitting in the room, and he walks right by me, puts his bag down, goes over and says, "Roddy Piper," sticks his hand out, and Tom Prichard. Okay, so my first time in the territory, and he's trying to find this guy, the office guy. I'm figuring out because he didn't get paid last night. He said, "You left me, and I didn't have any money, you son of a bitch." And they had a little shouting match, and I guess Piper got his money because he worked with Andre that night. So yeah, that was the first time I met him. He remembered that later on when I told him about it in Georgia, and so yeah, but he was gone. Yeah, he was pretty much gone by then. Yeah.
And Marcus Sewell wanted me to ask you, I guess you did a promo in Smoky Mountain Wrestling with Cornette, and his nose started bleeding in the promo. Do you have any recollection of that?
Well, I no, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Jimmy um, could be intense, and I think that when you get intense, sometimes you know your nose bleeds. I don't remember that one in particular, but
And Zachary wanted me to ask you if you have any good stories out of the WWE trial camps you did in New England with promoter Mike Sparta.
uh, well, I don't know if I have any good stories. You know, Mike gets a bad rap from people sometimes because I think it's just his demeanor. I think it's the way he talks to people or handles people. But I don't really have any good stories about Mike.
And Freddie Jerome said you had an amazing angle in Continental with Dirty White Boy and the I Need to Talk to Tom angle. Could you give us any of your thoughts on that?
That was when Eddie Gilbert had taken over the book. Ron Fuller had sold to David Woods in Montgomery. Eddie came in, and Eddie was looking for anything. He had ideas. He had Paul Heyman with him too, and uh, Tony and I had been working an angle or just working matches, and then we wound up. Um, I wound up with the Alabama title, I think. Yeah, and we were thinking of things. He wanted to do something to switch the belt and then have an angle. So I remember seeing Nick Bockwinkel in El Paso hit the ring to save this guy from the Hangman, who came to the ring with a noose. And his deal was he would put the noose, he'd beat the guy and then put the noose around the guy's neck and hang him in his back. Well, he started to do it to this guy on TV, and Bockwinkel hit the ring, and boy, he nailed Nick, and then he put the noose around Nick's neck and bailed him from corner to corner. And I just went, oh my God, that was impressive. So I thought, well, what if Tony hangs me and we do it in the ring? And Eddie said, I need more. I need something else. So I said, okay, well, let's think about it. So I came back and I said, what about he beats me for the belt? Kim's going to put Dirty White Girl's going to put the chloroform because we sprayed it with auto whatever it was. Anyway, going to put it around my face and cause me to lose the belt. Next week, I'm going to hit the ring. I'll hit Tony with a board. I'll have my hair up under my hat, sunglasses, and come out and I'll cut his hair. And then we'll come back. And what about if Kim has a split lip or something? You know, he punched her. Oh, I don't know if we can do a split lip, but let's do the black eye. I thought, yeah, that's good because it's Alabama, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's terrible. But anyway, so yeah, Kim comes up and I said she can dupe me. Tony nails from behind and hangs me in the ring. She says, no, I need more than that. So Eddie came up with, what if you guys destroy the set? And I said, okay, how about he handcuffs my hands behind my back? He goes, I like that. So there was no way to get my hands like this. And we didn't, back then you didn't rehearse anything. You just talked about it and you did it. And I didn't realize that the set from the ring was about 30 yards, 40 yards, something like that. And excuse me. Well, when we destroyed the set, the other thing is this. We were going to do it where I'm in the ring and I'm going to, Randy Colley, the Moondog, drew blood from my arm, put my blood in a condom, and we kept it warm in the dressing room. But it was too squishy, and I was going to, as soon as Tony hit me, destroyed the set, the referee's going to come out and put the condom in my mouth. Nobody see it. And then I'm going to bite it, and we're going to have blood running down and everything else. Well, he throws me in the set, goes down, the referee comes out, puts the gimmick in my mouth, and Tony handcuffs me. Now I'm kind of tangled up in the mic cords and the chairs, and Tony's got to get rid of all that. And he starts to pull me. Well, I can't really help him very well. And we're on this raised stage, and he goes to pull me. And now he's got to drag me, and I'm trying to help him, but the noose is actually getting tight. He's trying to work it, but as you pull, even on the rope, it cinches up. So I'm choking, man. And we get to the ring, and I can't tell him anything, but he throws the rope over the turnbuckle and starts pulling. He's not really pulling, but it's cinching up no matter what pressure you put on that rope. I'm trying to bite the condom, but it's too squishy and it's not busting. And Steve Armstrong had a blade, to come out. He said, well, if it doesn't work, come out and I'm going to put it in my teeth, and he's going to pop it with the blade and get the juice all over my shirt. I was wearing a yellow shirt so you could see the blood. And he did it, but they cut away from it on TV. They saw the blood at the arena, but they didn't see it on TV. But that was something to that was an angle we tried to well, we did it. We didn't try it. We did the angle, but it was pretty violent, I guess, for the time. The domestic violence wasn't looked upon very well, and rightfully so. But I didn't even think of the domestic violence in that. I just thought it's a violent angle. But anyway, yeah, that was kind of a cool angle. I wish I could say we sold out every building, but we didn't. It drew our normal houses, but it was just it gave us something to get involved in and gave us something to do. But
and Tom Bearcraft wanted me to ask you any memories of your days working for Don Owens, who you just mentioned.
Yeah, I stayed at the Bomber Motel which is a bunch of cabins in Milwaukee, Oregon, right outside of Portland. Don was a good man. Don was a very good man, and the Portland Sports Arena was another classic wrestling building because um, you you had wrestling fans back then, and they knew what they wanted to see, and Oregon has those kind of rugged lumberjack, hard working men and women, and they knew when you were going out giving it your all, and when you weren't, and that was always it was a lot of fun because working with guys like Rip Oliver and Buddy Rose, um, Dave Sierra, gosh, man, it was kind of like Pensacola in the way that you could go up there as a young guy, you could go up there as a veteran, and the trips weren't bad, the people were good, the boys were good. It was a nice place to live. There was a place called LaPrenzi's Gym. Kurt Hennig was there when I went, and Kurt was just getting ready to go to WWF back then, I think. But uh, that's where I got to meet Kurt and kind of hang out and got to know Kurt a little bit. And yeah, you had good wrestling towns. Seattle was a good wrestling town. Portland was a good wrestling town. Eugene. Um, Gosh, some of the other places we did. Sandy Barr ran a town every Thursday. I think. I think Elton had uh, Eugene on a either Friday or I don't remember. Honest to God, but Oregon was great. Don Owen was great. The whole family was great, and it it's a product of days gone by, which is sad, but it was. I'm glad I got to experience while it was there.
I guess Billy Jack Haynes would have been gone by the time you were there.
Well, yes, but he came back. Thank you for reminding me of Billy Jack because um Billy Billy had gone to New York and then he came back and I remember Don giving him shit in the dressing room one night and oh, big star, gotta come back now, big WWF star. Just messing with him, not being facetious with him, but just kind of messing with him. And Billy was a star in Oregon, and Billy was different then, but I think looking back on that and after talking to him recently, I think he was working the boys even then. Kind of like I was saying about Mark Lewin and Curtis and all those guys. Billy either picked up on that. He was eccentric even then, but I liked Billy. I mean, I always got along with him because I appreciate those eccentric, uh, little on the edge guys. I mean, I just do. It's a lot more interesting than saying, "Oh, you want to read a book?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the Memphis Wrestling wanted me to ask you about your run with Eric Embry as the invading Texas bunch, as well as any memories of Steve Austin from those days.
Yeah. Eric, I got along with fine. I knew where he was at. He would go to a place and figure out in the first 3 weeks if he was going to be able to get in the office, if he's going to be able to do what he wanted to do or not. And in Memphis, Jerry Jarrett had confidence in him. Uh, so he came in, and I was not one of Eric's guys right off the bat. I had been brought in from I think Dundee at this time or whoever it was. I'm not sure how I got there on this occasion, but it wasn't Eric who called me in. But we soon found out that we had more in common than not, and so that worked out in my case because it was a place to go and be involved, and at that time, figure out that I was going to be working with Jeff Jarrett, and that would put me in that spot. So it was a good spot to be in, and that's where I met Austin as well. And you could tell Steve had that look and he had the attitude. It was just a matter of having that opportunity, and he had everything going for him, and had a top guy stamped pretty much on him, but he needed to just be in that, have that vehicle to go through with it and follow through, and eventually he did. But we talked, and he said this before. I was riding in the car with him and Brian Lee one time, and asked him, I asked Brian first, why are you primetime Brian Lee? What is primetime Brian Lee? Then I looked at Steve and said, and you, who is stunning Steve Austin? This was when he had the blonde hair and the robe and the white wrestling boots. Okay, he looked the part. He was credible. He was authentic, beer drinking redneck from Texas. But stunning Steve Austin. It wasn't. It didn't fit. And then when he went to WWE, of course, everybody knows the story by watching the documentary, and that's about the killer and drink your tea, it'll get stone cold, and that's really the way characters are developed or personas happen, just by getting an inspiration somehow. And I this is another thing in wrestling class. Watch movies, listen to music, observe people, see things that you can take and make your own. And I'm reading right now, actually, during this quarantine time, the Andy Kaufman book, Andy Kaufman Revealed by Bob Samuda. And this guy, that's exactly what this guy did. And he loved professional wrestling, and but he used those elements. He was not a comedian. He was a live performance artist, whatever you want to call it. But he enjoyed making people uncomfortable. He enjoyed being in on the con. That was the deal, and that was the old school way back then. You heard something, you saw something, you said, "Wow, let me take that and make it my own." And that's what Steve did. And how in the world can anybody wear black boots, black knee pads, black trunks, and a black vest, a bald head, a goat beard, and mustache? How's that going to get over? Because he feels it, because it's that persona, because it's real, because it's authentic. He is connecting with the crowd. He's communicating. And that was what Steve was. He wasn't missing it. He just needed to know what lane to put it in. And once he got there, man, he hit the gas and he never stopped.
Have you tried any of his beer yet?
No, I have not. Is it good?
It's not available in Canada. That's why I was asking you. He should
No, no,
send
no, no.
up to his buddy.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I haven't tried the beer yet, but I should. Yeah.
And I'd recommend people to listen to the episode of you on his podcast. I heard that. I think it came out last year. It was really good.
Well, thank you, Steve. Steve knows what life's about. He's lived it, and the good thing about him is he realizes it's a work. It's all a work. No matter how much success you have, no matter how famous you got, it's the same thing with guys like Rock and Austin, and I think even I'll throw Roman Reigns in there too. They're the same guys that they were from the beginning, in one sense. They're different by all means, yes, but they still know and they still remember where they came from and what it was like. So not everybody does, but those guys do, because they know what it means.
Now, for Memphis, we all know that your brother doesn't really like Jerry Jarrett very much from his time in WWE, but how was your personal experiences with Mr. Jarrett?
I've had relationships throughout my life and career that I wish would have gone better. And there were times when I was up and then I was down with Jerry Jarrett. We finally came to the conclusion that I would rather be friendly and I would rather get along. And I think he did too. So, I can't speak for Bruce. I can only speak for me. But I've had a good relationship with Jerry since my last run there. The first couple times I was in Memphis, I think 3 or 4 times. The first couple times, you know, I I'm not a good people person, and I wasn't a good relationship person. I don't want to beat that dead horse, because every time I say that, it's like, well, man, I had problems. I think
You
we all
are a
had
good
problems.
people person, though, actually, in
Well,
my
well,
opinion.
right, but back then, see, I am better now because of my experiences back then, because it didn't translate very well, and I didn't connect, and I wasn't looking to connect. And if someone tried to connect with me, I almost rebelled, in the sense that, oh man, I really can't tell you why, and I've tried to figure it out, but after after all these years, I pretty much just said, that's because this is who I am. Now that I've got on, and I don't have, yeah, it's not like when you're wrestling, you have to get along with the booker, the promoter, the guy who owns the company, and you can't uh, tell him to go f himself. You can't, and sometimes I did, and for no good reason. It's just that's how I felt. But in the end, the last time Jerry and I had an understanding, and I was working with Jeff, and we were having good matches. And he gave me a guarantee at that time. I asked him. He didn't come up to me and say, "Hey, would you like this guarantee?" No, it was during the time in my life, in my career, when I felt I was working with Jeff, and we were having good matches, and it wasn't like we were suffering. We were doing okay. We weren't selling out every night either, but we were doing pretty steady business. And $40 a night, come on. So we worked out a small deal, no problem. But Jerry Jarrett is certainly a polarizing figure for a lot of reasons. And anytime it comes down to being the boss, you're going to have pros and you're going to have cons. I didn't care for Jerry Lawler when I first started there. It went in a few times, and then I my next couple runs, I got a better view. I got a better opinion. I got a better understanding of the dynamics, and how I needed. I couldn't expect them to mold to me. I had to mold to them. It's their company. It's their territory. If I wanted things to change, it was up to me to make it change. And I understood that then. I just didn't apply it. I understand it now, and now I try my best to apply it. I do my best to apply it. So Jerry Jarrett, I can see why he'd be polarizing. I certainly, I've had dealings with him on that side of it too, where I was going, what? But uh, yeah, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And do you have an impression of him?
Uh, no, I think I'll leave the impressions to Bruce. No, I don't think I do. Yeah.
Now, this next question, I don't know much about this situation. It's from Brian Mack. It's a controversial one, I guess. What are your thoughts on Jimmy Del Rey allegedly raping a woman in '94, which, according to Kevin Nash, was ultimately blamed on Tatanka?
Um. Well, I I don't I wasn't there. I know that. I was in town, but I don't know, and I've never asked to hear the whole story. And I know you're looking at me and thinking, yeah, right. Of course you don't. But the thing is this. Um you know, I always looked at it like this. We were out, and I there's a reason why I didn't go out a lot of times during that run, because uh you're inviting trouble, and I just knew it. So on one night in LA, it was LA, right? Yes. Yes, it was. Wherever it was. Everybody went out and came back. Some guys went to the bar, but Davey, Lex, and we went to the left side to the elevators and went up to our room. And after that, it was like, holy shit. And, Jimmy and I didn't travel together back then at that time because we were two different people. And we would go to the bar. And the times I did go to the bar with him, we I'm the kind of guy who wants to come in and kind of scope the place out, just look around for a little bit, just either sit at the bar or stand over here and watch, or just kind of chill for the first 30 minutes or an hour, whatever. I don't want everybody, yeah. Anyway, and Jimmy was just the opposite and wanted to draw attention, and that's cool. That's his personality, but it wasn't my deal. So we kind of separated that way. So whatever happened, happened. I guess. I don't know about the Tatanka deal because back then, I'm telling you, I was a loner because I was trying to stay out of trouble. I knew myself, and I knew if I went out with somebody, I knew that either what I did was going to be misinterpreted and reported back, or what I did was going to be correct and reported back. And I didn't want either one of those. I wanted to do what I wanted to do with who I wanted to do it with, and I'll do it at my room or away from anybody having any eyes that could misconstrue what was going on. So I didn't ask. I swear I didn't ask. Didn't ask Jimmy, didn't ask Tatanka. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to be called. I didn't want to be told. That's the truth. I wasn't, man. Did I hear? We all heard. But, man, I wanted to make it clear that he's on the island here and I'm in the forest over there. So that was all.
TL Hopper Jr. wants to know if Sonny ever hit on you.
Never. No, Sonny, she never did. Um, she was 18 when I met her, I think, and I was, oh God, 30. I don't know. And plus, I love Chris, and I would never do that to Chris. So I would. I wouldn't do it to any of the boys' girlfriends or wives, personally. Uh, but no, Sonny never did.
And this is kind of a follow-up question from a different fan, Max Zorin. He wanted to know if you noticed, or what was the worst thing you noticed about the clique allegedly picking on Chris Candido?
Well, it was pretty blatant and obvious what was happening. Nobody was hiding anything, and uh, sometimes you have to make a stand. And Chris wasn't that kind of guy. He just wanted to wrestle. He just loved the business and didn't want any problems, didn't want any trouble. And here you have the love of your life traveling with you with all these guys, full of testosterone, full of piss and vinegar, and know they're untouchable. It was a sticky place for me to be in, because if I said anything at all, which I did one time, and that blew up in my face. So there was no getting through. I don't know if it's getting through, but there was no making Chris understand that in order to make this thing go away, maybe not go away, but it's going to go away one way or another. You have to make a stand, and that means you're either going to get fired or you're not, because they're not going to get fired. But if it keeps on going, it's just going to get worse, and it did get worse, and it was a bad situation to be in. It's a horrible situation for me to be in because every night I would walk to the ring, and George Steele came to me one time and says, "Hey, we don't want to tell everybody our business. Don't walk to the ring with your head down and about 5 feet, 6 feet behind them. Now it's okay because we have social distancing, but I would actually walk behind, man, just like, oh my God, it wasn't a fun time. And of course, Tammy was young. Tammy was a star. Tammy knew she's always had confidence. Um, but she loved the attention. She loved the attention, and I, I don't I don't know if I can fault her for that, but at the same time, you have to have some loyalty and you have to have some character, in my opinion.
Satcher Man wanted to know what you think of the cinematic matches that have been happening lately.
I actually I actually kind of like them. I really do. I like the Boneyard match. I like the Cena gimmick with Bray Wyatt. Um,
And you're
and
not just saying that because your brother apparently produced the Cena one.
no, no, I actually thought it was pretty funny. I really did. It's not wrestling. I'm not looking at it for wrestling at all. And if Bruce, I've told Bruce when I thought it sucked. No, but I actually thought it was funny. Uh, just with the quips in there, because I knew, and I'm not necessarily a wrestling purist in the sense that you can't have some entertainment as long as it's entertaining. As long as look, did you ever see a Space Odyssey 2001?
Yes, about 20, 30 years ago. Yeah.
Right. It's been a while, right? Okay. Do you remember the ending? Do
To
you
be
remember?
honest,
Right.
no, I don't.
Correct. Okay. Well, I watched that not too long ago. Don't ask me why, but I do. And I did. The ending is really confusing and it doesn't leave anything concrete or substantial. And they kind of, so I Googled it and I said, what is the meaning of 2001? What is the ending? Well, Stanley Kubrick said he left it that way so people can interpret it however they want to interpret it. When Titus O'Neil at the end of the Funhouse match said, "I don't know what I just saw," that was perfect because it left it up to whoever watched it to say, "What was that?" And you could go, "Oh, that was the stupidest thing I ever saw," or "That was pretty clever and entertaining." I'm not saying it was clever and entertaining, but it was entertaining. Clever, okay, maybe bits and pieces were, but it wasn't wrestling, and I wasn't looking at it for wrestling, and it struck me as like a 2001 movie. You get all these bits and pieces of it, and you're going, "What the hell is this for? What are you doing this for?" And you watch in the end, going, "What?" And then they come out with this revelation, and you're supposed to figure it out. They don't tell you what it is. Same thing with the Funhouse. Was it Cena's career through the years? What was it? Don't know, but it entertained me. The Undertaker gimmick. Why, and how could you not? Knowing the players involved, AJ Styles and the Undertaker. I don't know. It was uncharted ground. This is, territory that they're blazing the trail right now. So no matter what they do, there's no right or wrong. There's just, we're going to set this standard right here. Now we can either move up from it or we can go down from it. So I got to give those guys, with all they were going through and having to deal with no crowd at WrestleMania. Here's where I'm drawing my conclusion. With no crowd at WrestleMania, it's a Firefly Funhouse match. What exactly is a Firefly Funhouse match? They've never had one before. There's no audience there for it. You can't have a lot of the special effects. So what do? You do what you did, and I accepted it for that. I accepted it for the guys who were in it, with Cena especially, who can be do that self-effacing humor and make fun of himself when he wants to. So I kind of dig it. I think I don't know about a steady diet of it, but I thought the Money in the Bank ladder match, just because I know where they were in Titan Tower, and I'm thinking, oh my God, are they actually going to destroy this? I thought the food fight was great in the cafeteria. It showed a different side, and again, it wasn't wrestling, and it was, uh, you know, Corbin threw the weight and smashed the mirror. So I'm thinking, okay, they're making the best with what they have, and I felt I felt for the guys. I felt for Drew McIntyre especially, because here's your big opportunity at WrestleMania. You're headlining against Brock Lesnar, and you win, and there's not a crowd. There's not a live audience, but everybody's watching it on the network. So, um, I like the cinematic part of it. I like the fact that at least they are going forward with it, and you know, it was cool to me.
I like that they're doing the different locations too. One thing I'm not a fan of, though, and I don't know what your opinion is on it. I know it's just entertainment, they say it, but after Otis won, he gave an interview to Sports Illustrated saying he had fun putting the match together with everyone. And then WrestleMania, after Drew won, he publicly thanked Brock Lesnar for putting him over. And it's like they're absolutely not even trying to kayfabe at all anymore.
No, they're not. And um, I said something on Twitter today about uh, Brian Pillman Jr. said something about the matches are smoother, faster, better than they were 30 years ago. And my point in responding to that was, I don't know if they're better, faster, smoother, um, but there's no feeling in them. It doesn't matter. Everybody knew it was a work, or the majority of people knew it was a work 30 years ago, hell, 40 years ago, shit, 50 years ago. But the difference was, you had guys, and my examples are Terry Funk, Johnny Valentine, Wahoo McDaniel, the Great Malenko, Jose Lothario, Gino Hernandez, to a point, um, who would go out there, and Lance Storm brought this up, the Freebirds versus the Von Erichs. You felt the heat and the tension in the match. You felt, uh, even though it was work, they went out and they elicited an emotion from the audience. They didn't go out and thank their opponents and do all that stuff. Now, I see that's the culture we live in today, because everybody wants to know the inside scoop. That's part of the issue that is going to take wrestling either here or it's going to go down here. And right now, of course, with the pandemic, it's having a hard time, obviously. But even before that, the house shows weren't doing very well. And for the last couple of years, the house shows have not been doing great business. So, what's missing? Authenticity and feeling when you go to the crowd, or when you go to the show, the matches. Brock Lesnar was the most authentic guy they had, and Brock was a part-time guy. I get it, but I don't think it's necessary. But at the same time, it is the culture we find ourselves in, and wrestling has become what it is, and it's showbiz. It's always been showbiz, but there were guys who had that edge to them, and the Blue Man Group is a great. Yeah, have you ever seen these guys live by any chance?
No.
Okay,
No.
well, you've seen them though on
Oh,
TV.
they're in Vegas. Don't they have a show in Vegas?
They do, but they had the original guys were on Broadway, New York, and my wife got us tickets for an anniversary because I talked about the Blue Man Group for so long. It's live. on stage, and they shoot this. They're, I don't know how far apart, but the guy shoots marshmallows from a gun over into the guy's mouth. Okay, he doesn't do just one. He does like a whole bag, and the guy doesn't miss one. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know the skill? I don't know. I've never caught marshmallows in my mouth like that. But they do this act, and there's also elements of danger in there where you don't know if they're going to fall, don't know what they're going to do, you don't know how they're going to come out of this next skit, whatever it may be. So there was an edge to it, and they don't break character. Even at the end, when there's you can go and they'll sign something, or they have this they do painting on stage and all this other stuff, but they don't break character. And that's the kind of performance I want to see. That's the kind of stuff that used to be in wrestling, but now it's completely different. They'll tell everybody how it's done, and everybody wants to know, or it seems like everybody wants to know. It kind of loses the mystery there, and it might just be the progression, and it also might be the downfall. I don't know.
Last bunch of fan questions here. Eric wanted to know what it was like working with Gordon Soley in Continental.
Gordon Soley was one of the boys. He was a great guy. He was a lot of fun to be around too, and um, he got it. He was he could make you, even on his off nights. He could make you sound and look like $1,000,000 and so much better than you were. And I had a lot of fun with Gordon. I had some great conversations with him, and he was entertaining. He was a lot of fun. I had some good times with him. I met him in Atlanta too. Did commentary with him in Atlanta when I was just a kid too, and always helpful. And again, he was one of the boys. He was great.
And Stuart Meatball wanted to know what's your favorite match of all time that you were in personally?
Uh, Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if there's one match, but any match with Brad Armstrong was my favorite match. I've had a couple really good matches with Jeff Jarrett too, and I've had some good matches. But I think anything with Brad, anything with Jeff Jarrett, would have to be a favorite.
And what's your opinion on how Glenn is doing right now as Mayor? Rome Williams wanted to know.
Well, for somebody who came into this thing when a lot of people didn't give him a prayer, I think he's done pretty damn good. It's we've never had this happen in our lifetime, a pandemic like this, and having to put on stay-at-home rules. I think that goes against everything Glenn believes, but he's doing the best he can. I think he's done a pretty damn good job so far.
Yes, and I actually admire him for like taking the public stance he has regarding some of these rules that are happening, causing all this financial strain everywhere.
Yeah, he truly believes that. He is a libertarian at heart, and he believes that with all his fiber. And we've been out since March, April, May, 2 months, and we're getting ready to go back in June. So yeah, he's definitely uh, he's done his best to make the people of Knox County um, able to get back to their normal lives, and that's all you can do at this point.
And I got to ask you, your brother's probably more popular now than ever because of his podcast, and he's back in a great position with WWE. What are your thoughts on the big resurgence of Bruce over the past few years?
Well, it's no secret not everybody likes Bruce, and that's okay. I haven't always liked Bruce, and we've always we haven't always seen eye to eye. But I think for him to do what he's done, especially with his podcast, and then go to these clubs and these places like the Gramercy and the Barclay Center, and actually. I went to one in Nashville where he was at. I think it was at Zany. Sold out. I mean, it was like, oh my God. He and Conrad do their show, and he tells his stories, and it was amazing. So I'm happy for him at this stage in his life and at this stage in my life. I have come to a few conclusions that life really is too short, and I didn't feel that way when I was mad. When I was mad, it was like, the hell with it, I don't care. But uh, eventually, I had to look at life the way I lived it, and I had to look at life the way I felt, and I had to just stop and realize: do I want to keep feeding this negativity that I have? Because I had a lot of negativity, and I had a lot of anger built up. For what? Well, was it justified? In my mind, yeah. Uh, but in the end, what does it really matter? That's the way I'm thinking about it. And would I rather be able to have a good relationship, or would I rather be able to have at least a connection, or an open line dialogue? I didn't care, and then why not? And I thought about it. Why not? So I'm glad he's back. He he knows the game better than anyone, I think, in that position, and he's smart at what he does. Man, trust me, I've heard all the comments. I've got a lot of them. They've come back to me and they've asked me the same thing. But it does take a certain person to be in that spot, and it does take a certain person to succeed and to be in that company. Not just now, but I mean previously. He's been there a long time, and we were talking about earlier the games. Yeah, there's games, and he knows how to do it better than anybody I know. So I'm happy he's back. I mean, it's a great opportunity because you need people like that in your organization to understand how to get the job done. And it's not always easy, and it's not always nice, and it's not always pleasant, but it takes those kind of people to make things work.
Now, when they sat you down, I think you were a great wrestler, by the way. I know you had a bad gimmick there with the Zip, but when they sat you down and told you your name was going to be Zip, what was your reaction?
Oh man, there comes a time when you've been beat so much. and and I understand how people could confess to crimes because you just want it to stop. Just stop. Okay, I did it. I did it. I did it. It's kind of how I felt. It was like, well, do you want to cut your hair and dye it blonde? No. Okay, click. Yeah, it's just hair. Why not? Sure. And we had Flip, Trip, or some other stupid name that was copyrighted. And they said, "Well, you're going to be Zip," and I thought, okay, this is it. This is just a job. I wasn't having fun. It was pretty much just showing up and doing what I had to do. And it was not anything that I was putting my heart into, my soul, my effort. Uh, it was, like I said, sometimes you've been beat too much and, you just kind of go, okay, just stop. I'll do it. And, I didn't have to. I could have gone, got a job at Walmart. And not that that's bad. I just didn't want to work at Walmart. I wanted to wrestle. I still wanted to be in the business. And that was my opportunity. That was the only thing that was coming my way right then. Could I have suggested something else? Maybe. I didn't have anything on my suggestion list, though. And I was going to work with Chris. And I still thought, because we didn't get my haircut until later that night. And I still thought there might be a way to talk him out of it. But no, it wasn't. And I just I dealt with it as best as I could, and I didn't always deal with it well.
Now, I remember WrestleMania 12. I was younger in those days. I think I was still a kid. I found it unusual that they put the tag team title match on the free for all. Were you offended at all by that when you came and you saw it's not even on the WrestleMania?
Yeah, we were. I think we all were kind of wanting it to be on WrestleMania, but they didn't put a whole lot of stock in the tag team titles back then. It was us against the Godwins, and if you look at the tag teams, you had the New Rockers, you had the Guns, Smoking Guns. I think that's where I broke Billy's neck. I actually, by accident, jumped down on Billy's neck from the apron. He was on a knee, and it came down like bam. I didn't know it broke his neck. I didn't hit him that hard. I didn't think, but yeah, they weren't putting a whole lot of stock in there, and that was like, okay, I got it. But again, I was, there's only so many times you can, beat the dog before he finally just says, okay, I give up. So yeah, it was kind of it was a letdown, but we didn't have any better ideas, obviously.
Now, WrestleMania 12 was the Ultimate Warrior's WWE debut, and I was just thinking back to it, and I remembered I did an Ohio Valley wrestling camp back in like 2002, and you came in as part of that camp, and I remember you gave a speech, and you mentioned in that speech you really didn't like the Ultimate Warrior. Do you still feel the same way
Oh,
about the?
I don't know that it was about not liking the guy. Maybe personally, I just think that the Ultimate Warrior.
I think you said that you hated when people said the Ultimate Warrior was their favorite wrestler. I think it was something along that line.
Yeah, I don't know that it was about hating. It was about the fact that when somebody said their favorite wrestler was the Ultimate Warrior, what they were saying is they liked the way he shaked the ropes and ran to the ring, and because he didn't wrestle. He didn't wrestle. It's not what he did. He was an entertainer. His matches weren't supposed to go any longer than they went. It's like Goldberg. Goldberg was not programmed to go, over a minute, if that. So same thing with the Warrior. He was not, you know, uh, years ago, the guy named Gorgeous George. Uh, Once that's where the saying came from. They said, he had his entrance. He'd take his time, and there was a 5-6 minute entrance, and Strangler Lewis or whoever it was talking to somebody in the back saying, "Watch this, watch this, watch the entrance." Said, "Okay." Then the bell rings. Let's go back because that's all. You've seen it all. Same thing with the Warrior. Once you ran to the ring, clothesline, press slam, whatever. That's great. My point was that's great once you get to that point, but you have to have a foundation. You have to know the basics before you can get to that point. Um, because there may come a time, as Goldberg found out when he worked with Regal, there may come a time when you have to know more than just running to the ring, shaking the ropes, press slam, clothesline, whatever it may be. So when somebody would say, "I love the Ultimate Warrior," okay, then you want to. We asked a girl one time, "Did you watch Raw last night?" "Yeah." "What'd you think?" "Well, I loved when the pyro went wee," and I went, "What?" That's what you got out of Raw when the pyro went wee? No. So it's like the Ultimate Warrior. Okay, you loved him for the entrance, you loved him for the colorful character he is, rightfully so, because this is a colorful business. But um, with the sizzle, you need steak. And Warrior went through the Bassman School, and he knew what he knew. And then he went through Texas, and then he went to New York. So he was going to learn what he learned in Texas, and they're going to teach you some basics and foundation. But when you get to the big company, if you don't need to do it, then you don't need to do it. But it's good to have a foundation to build on, and that's what I meant when I would talk about people saying the Ultimate Warrior was their favorite wrestler. He was their favorite personality, celebrity, entertainer. but wrestling wasn't wrestling in his repertoire. And rightfully so, because when you're in the main event, I don't believe I've ever heard anyone walk out of the arena and say, "Boy, what a hammerlock that Hogan did tonight." They didn't care. They don't care about that. It's about how you do what you do in the ring. It's not how much you do. At the end of the day, it is about drawing money. It is about characters. It is about persona. It is about connecting and communicating with the audience. And if that resonates with you, the Ultimate Warrior, or any one of that flash that grabs your attention, that's the idea. But you have to learn how to do that. That doesn't happen overnight. Stone Cold Steve Austin didn't just start out as Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was a different guy as Stunning Steve, but he learned all that during that time as Stunning Steve Austin to become Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was the ringmaster when he first got to WWE. That was the farthest thing that what Steve was. So, and the Warrior was the Dingo Warrior in Texas, and prior to that he was Blade. I saw Warrior and Sting when they first started in Memphis. They were horrible. Jerry Jarrett told them both they should quit the business. They'll never make a dime. Well, okay, well they did, and they both were world champions at the same time for each company. So you can't argue. I will not argue with success. It may not be my cup of tea, but if something gets over and people react to it, then they got something.
As a former producer, do you find it strange that they release a seasoned producer with a track record for producing top talent in the recent WWE releases, but they kept Sylvain Grenier, who's been out of the business for the past 8 years and is new to the job?
I, you know, I found out sometimes only they know the reason they're going to let you go or furlough or whatever it may be. It could be that Sylvain lives in Florida. It could be he lives close by, and they're keeping some guys and letting other guys go. So for whatever reason, it has to be probably with the logistics right now. At least that's kind of the vibe I got. Most of the guys you're using have either living in or around Tampa or Orlando, so that could be something to do with Sly.
All right. And for people that want to check out your podcast, could you tell us a little bit about your podcast and also where we could subscribe to it?
It is, if you go to jpwrestlingacademy.com, it's on the front page. It's called Taking You to School with the two-man power trip podcast. And John Paz does it with me every Sunday night. And, we've only been doing it, geez, I guess it has been a couple months now, almost since the first of the year. And, we're trying to tell stories and talk about, where I've been, what I've done, how I've done it. And I don't know if everybody gives a damn or not, but yeah, it's on the front page of jpwrestlingacademy.com. And once again, we're going to start June 1st again. And anybody is interested in joining, there's an application, there's information, there's an email, jpwrestlingacademy@gmail.com. So check us out.
And I guess you probably still do outside bookings as well if people want to bring you in to be a guest trainer or something for a weekend or a day.
I'm doing a seminar in Altoona, Pennsylvania in the middle of June. So about, I don't have the date in front of me right here, but you can also contact me at the JPWA website and email too. Again, the email jpwrestlingacademy@gmail.com, but certainly.
And you're on Twitter. I don't know about Facebook. Where else on social media?
On Facebook, we have a Jacobs Prichard Wrestling Academy on Facebook. I also have my own Facebook, Tom Prichard, and Twitter is Dr. Tom Prichard. So we've got all the social media covered. I think we have Instagram too. I'm pretty sure we do with the JPWA. Our IT guy is Jamal McKinney. and he does a great job.
I know at one point you were close with Dustin Rhodes. Are you still buddies with him?
Uh, yeah, I just haven't talked to Dustin in a while. He's been kind of busy. So, and that happens. You talk to some guys, and then you don't talk to them for a while.
So you do have even some connections in AEW as far as if there's some guy that stands out that you want to have a look.
Yeah, I think every company is always looking for new talent, young talent. And if it's not me, it's Glenn. If it's not Glenn, it's me. But I mean, we're going to be able to contact someone if we see someone with talent, and that's how it works. Networking and getting your name out there. There, I had a guy call me last week to ask me about one of our guys who was going to work for him on a streaming show, and he asked me what I thought, and I told him honestly. He very everybody's green these days, but he'll listen, and he won't give you any trouble. He'll do everything you ask him to do, and that's all it takes sometimes. And it also takes the other way too. If somebody asks me about somebody who's a pain in the ass, a prima donna, and hard to do business with, I'm going to tell them the same thing.
You're gonna say, "Don't do business with Hannibal."
No. I wouldn't say that, because I told you. I think the part that you do with uh, especially deal with Terry Funk, I thought was very well done. The deal with Lanny was excellent too, just because I always look at it from a cynical point of view, and uh, when I see it and I smell it, I can. It usually goes through the smell test, and if there's that element of realism or authenticity, then it comes out, and everybody else will feel it too. I think that's what people want. I think that's what people are missing. So when you get someone who understands it and gets it, and isn't afraid to cross that line, not caring about what the only one you need to worry about is the guy you're doing it with, so he understands where you're going with it. Then that's a plus these days.
I did one of those with Tommy Dreamer too. I don't think it's a plus these days, though. Honestly, I think that the bigger companies want to shy away from that, but I'm fine with that because I'm actually getting more views than Ring of Honor, MLW, New
Right.
Japan, NWA. So I'm doing just fine on my own. And I really appreciate that you took this time to speak with me and you answered all the fan questions. So thank you very much. Anything you want to plug or say to close this off?
No, one thing I will mention real quick. I do have my book that if anyone's interested too. This is just it's a curriculum, but it's my book, and it's just suggestions. It's a pro wrestling curriculum, advice, suggestions, and stories to help the aspiring pro get to the next level. Just some ideas, suggestions, and drills in there too. They can get this on Amazon. They can get it on PayPal for $25, personally autographed at Dr. Tom Prichard. So that's it. JPWA, jpwrestlingacademy.com. And that's it. Thank you for having me.
I might actually order one of those books from you just so I could lend it to wrestlers that wrestle for me and my company because I go nuts sometimes editing match videos.
Well, the problem is, if they don't know what you're talking about, you have to either demonstrate it or show them. And what I find is a lot of guys don't understand when I've mentioned this just briefly is when I talk about old matches, I'm not talking about, boy, I wish it was like this today. What I'm talking about is if you have these elements of telling me a story, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That never changes. You still need a beginning, you still need a middle, and you still need an end. Do it in 2020's version, but watch how these guys got the emotion. Watch how these guys warmed the crowd up Watch how they got the serious heat in the middle. Watch how the comeback fell in at the end, and watch how they went to the finish, and watch how it all pieced together. That's all. And then don't do the exact same moves in the exact same style. Just take the elements of the beginning, the middle, and the end and make it all make sense. Work it together, man. It's like baking a cake. Would you put sugar, eggs, flour, or would you put sugar, grass, and dirt? I mean, it makes no sense. If you want a great tasting cake, you want everyone to admire it and look at it and get satisfaction from it. Same thing with a match. So there's some elements that are steadfast, and first, second, third.
And to close this off, I know you had a feud with Jeff Jarrett. He's back working for WWE now. He's in the Hall of Fame as a producer. Hopefully they'll put you in the Hall of Fame one day for all your work there as a trainer. But let's say in Knoxville tonight, Jeff Jarrett was coming down from Nashville and he had a match with you. What would you have to say to Jeff Jarrett to close this interview off?
When you talk about Rhinestone Cowboys and you talk about Double J, you can only talk about one other person that's going to be the competition that will push a man to his limits. And Jeff, we've wrestled many times together, but tonight in Knoxville, Tennessee, if you want to talk about limitless, you're looking at him. If you want to talk about going to the limit, we're going to find out if you can actually make it.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.